Welcome to the video showcasing the development process of my bachelor thesis project and an upcoming VR application about dinosaurs named MesoZoo. The name itself is something people I've shown the app to seem to be somewhat confused about, so let me explain first. The era of the dinosaurs is known as the Mesozoic, and knowing this should already give an idea of where the name MesoZoo comes from. So Mesozoic, MesoZoo, as if a zoo with Mesozoic creatures. I felt it will give more justice, but still be thematically similar to something as well known as Jurassic Park. And it's also to ensure the inclusion of dinosaurs from all three periods of the Mesozoic, so Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous. Ironically, though, the dinosaur that is the app's main focus for now is from the Jurassic period. Either way, the name MesoZoo might be confusing at first, but in the end, hopefully people might leave having learned something new. And that is the general idea for the whole app, as I aim to compare incorrect dinosaurs as they are shown in popular media with ones that are more in line with our current scientific understanding. I chose virtual reality as the medium because I believe it provides the best opportunity for acquainting ourselves with the dinosaurs by seeing their true scale, interacting with them, and feeling as if we are standing right in front of a living, breathing animal. The VR app is and will be my focus for the nearest future, but understanding that VR is still not amongst the most popular, I have plans for a desktop and Android release at some point. But since this video is supposed to show how the development process looked so far, let me get right into that. So in an app about dinosaurs, the dinosaurs themselves obviously should be the main focus. And since my goal is to compare fictitious depictions with the more scientific ones, I first asked myself which dinosaurs are the most misrepresented in pop culture, and how ingrained those representations are in society. The more obvious choices, such as the Tyrannosaurus or the Triceratops, are good picks, of course, but when it comes to the sheer disparity between the fictional and real animal, there are no two more misrepresented dinosaurs than the Dilophosaurus and the Velociraptor. Courtesy to their portrayal in the first Jurassic Park, more than 3 decades later, most people probably still imagine them as they were in that first movie. The franchise never backed down from or refined those designs, so it would be weird if the truth was any different. But it's not just Jurassic Park that made sure we see Velociraptor as a sizable, intelligent, two-legged lizard, and Dilophosaurus as a small, venomous, and thrilled. Toy makers, video game developers, book illustrators, and even museums still often show them in the fashion of their 90s blockbuster star appearance. So with my candidates chosen, I searched for inspiration in other portrayals, both scientific and more imaginative. And there were two very important media I initially chose to pull out from. Quite literally. Let me explain. There are two games that already have perfectly realized models of both the most popular fictional and closely scientific dinosaur representations. Both are dinosaur park building simulators. I'm talking about Jurassic World Evolution 2 and Prehistoric Kingdom. I absolutely adore both of the games and their portrayals of dinosaurs. So at the beginning, I excitedly ported the models from those games into Blender to see them side by side and use in my comparative app. But quickly I realized that if I use those models, I'm kind of locking myself out of ever having a chance to release my app. And that's what I want to do in the end. So I opted out of doing that, using the models I just spent time on importing, and instead began a long and somewhat painful journey of modeling, sculpting, then modeling again, then texturing, rigging, weight painting, and finally animating all by myself. Having the video game models as loose inspiration, along with other research that I had to do to make sure my scientific dinosaurs are actually somewhat scientific. This whole process took most of the time I was working on this, as even with the previous experience with Blender and even modeling and texturing dinosaurs, there were many things I was doing for the first time here, such as actually rigging, so creating skeletons for the models, and weight painting, which is assigning which bones control which area of the mesh and how much influence they have. Really fun stuff. No, no, it was not fun. So, along the way, I modeled 4 dinosaurs, 2 dilophosaurs, and 2 raptors. Then, after texturing and rigging the dilophosaurs, I realized I won't have enough time to finish all 4 before my deadline. So, I shifted my focus fully towards the dilophosaurs and began animating them. Animation, while arguably the easiest from the things I've mentioned, is pretty time taking, especially if we want to be believable. So that was a lengthy process, and I also ran into many issues with the rigs or skeletons I used. Blender has an add-on called Rigify, and it's usually pretty good for humanoid characters and some animals like cats, dogs, or birds, but it doesn't include presets for dinosaurs. I chose to use it anyway, and for my dinosaurs, I applied a modified bird rig with a head of a dog rig. And this was a huge mistake, and I should have created dedicated rigs without using Rigify, but I didn't know at the time that it would cause problems down the line, and the rigs and later the animations were actually looking pretty good, so I just ran with it. I ended up with 4 idle animations for each Dilophosaurus, and only then I decided it's time to transfer them into Unity. So I did, and the animations looked horrendous. Weird body deformations, head stretching whenever the dinosaur moved its neck, teeth not following the body. It was a whole mess. So I panicked a little bit, but still began to search for fixes. Overall, I spent quite some time tweaking the weight painting, trying different export and import settings both in Blender and Unity, deleting the scale transforms from all the animations manually, then by a script, then finding even more bugs I wasn't aware of, and finally learning that I just shouldn't have used Rigify because Unity is not very compatible with it. Sure, there is a compatibility add-on, but it just didn't work for me because my rigs were Frankenstein from a dog and a bird. So, I didn't have much time left at that point, and my VR app was 1, still not VR, and 2, didn't have anything besides 2 slightly buggy, yet nonetheless moving, Dilophosaurs. I know I will need to remake the rigs at some point, but now was not the time for it, and I decided to focus on somewhat finalizing the build I already have. So I imported the textures, animations, fixed up as much as I was able to. I made a simple ground mesh, imported free fur shader from GitHub to make both grass and the feathers on one of the Dilophosaur's back. Huge thanks to the shader creator, by the way. Then I used Unity's built-in VR preset to not have to code all the interactions myself like I did last time while making a simple VR app. Sorry for the digression. And finally, I set the settings up how I liked, recorded a somewhat acceptable commentary, made a simple logo, imported that as well, and after weeks of work, ended up with this. Welcome to MesoZoo in-depth build, a proof-of-concept prototype of an educational VR application exploring the comparative representation of dinosaurs in popular culture versus their depiction according to modern scientific research. Plainly speaking, I want to show you how popular portrayals of many dinosaurs differ from how they might have actually looked like. In the build you're currently exploring, the main focus is the Dilophosaurus, the 2 specimens you see in front of you. On the left is the Dilophosaurus you're probably familiar with, broad-faced, not especially large, with its signature double head crests and the infamous intimidating frill, probably about to spit venom right in your face. The dinosaur on the right is also a Dilophosaurus. However, this specimen is much larger, with a much slimmer skull, a 4th finger on each forelimb, a straight horizontal posture, and sparse protofeathers along its upper body. This one does not spit venom, it doesn't intimidate its prey with a frill, and apart from its crests and coloration, you might think the two animals are completely different species. In a way, they are. The Dilophosaur on the left is not genetically pure. It was infused with frilled lizard and spitting cobra DNA, along with some other confidential additions. The Dilophosaur on the right is as close to its real Jurassic counterpart as possible. Feel free to come closer and take a look at them. They've both been trained and won't bite. Probably. Additional developer commentary. In the current build, the dinosaurs only cycle through 4 idle animations and cannot really be interacted with. In the future, they should be able to look players in the eye, move around their enclosure, attempt to bite, and react to physics objects. Additional commentary explaining specific anatomical differences will appear when looking at or interacting with certain body parts. The control scheme should be visible when you look at the controllers in your hands, though not all functions are implemented yet. There are a few placeholder physics objects around the playable area. For now, they only interact with each other and with the ground. You can pick them up either from a distance or up close. If you look around, you'll also find statues of another pair of dinosaurs, the velociraptors, that unfortunately didn't make it into this first demo build. Dilophosaurus and Velociraptor are widely misrepresented in pop culture, influenced by their starring roles in a certain blockbuster movie franchise. They were chosen for this exact reason. In both size and overall appearance, the popular image of them differs greatly from modern scientific understanding. Due to the time it took to research, model, texture, and animate the Dilophosaurs, I wasn't able to give the same treatment to the Velociraptors. In future development, however, I will include fully animated velociraptors and many more species for comparison. Every model and texture you see here, except the ferns at the edge of the area, was made from scratch in Blender. Since this is my first time importing animated models from Blender into Unity, you may notice some errors in how the Dilophosaurs move. Fixing this would require re-rigging and reanimating them, rigging being the process of attaching bones and constraints to prepare a model for animation. Re-rigging wasn't feasible without scrapping the existing animations, so despite the flaws, I decided to keep them for now. These issues, however, will be fixed in later versions. The incorrect dinosaurs are based largely on their depictions in the Jurassic Park and Jurassic World franchises, while the scientifically accurate models take inspiration from current research as well as the Prehistoric Planet TV series and the Prehistoric Kingdom video game, both of which feature excellent up-to-date reconstructions. While my aim is to educate and bring these Mesozoic creatures to life as we currently understand them, you should keep in mind that every dinosaur you see here, and anywhere else, is still just an artistic reimagining. In most cases, details such as exact skin structure, coloration, distribution of soft tissue, and even behavior remain unknown. Artists often take liberties. In entertainment media, dinosaurs are usually made more monstrous to heighten their intimidation factor, while in educational media they are rendered more realistically, but still not perfectly true to life, due to how much we still don't know. Even so, I believe it's important to preserve what paleontology has given us as faithfully as possible, even in popular entertainment. That way, we can appreciate these magnificent extinct creatures for what they really were, instead of monsters that barely resemble the animals that once walked this planet. Thank you for checking out MesoZoo. Stay tuned for more. The commentary for the app was recorded before I started making this little development documentary, so apologies if I repeated myself at any point. As it stands right now, the app is functional, but understandably lacking in content. This is what I was able to achieve in roughly 2 months, the time I had for completion of my bachelor thesis. not including the written part, which would make the actual development time much shorter. I will continue the development further, and at some time when I'm satisfied with what I've done, I'll be releasing it. Probably through SideQuest first, and hopefully later on the MetaQuest store. This experience has taught me that I have a long way ahead of myself, if that's my plan, as game development is a rather lengthy process, especially if you do a lot by yourself, making almost everything from scratch. And this is all I have for now. Thank you for watching.